Hello, and how are you? My name is Ayub Mwangi. I am a communication and organizational communication professional. I want to welcome you to this podcast in which we talk about issues that relate to organizational communication and management. Now, today we want to address what is called issues management. In the management of any organization, there might arise some issues that may need to be addressed, failure to which they can lead to what we refer to as a crisis. For instance, you might find that in the course of running your organization, there are some activists who are following up on an issue that may affect your organization. Now, it is imperative for the organization to know what is happening within their operational environment so that whatever the issue is does not culminate into a full-blown crisis. What am I talking about here? For instance, people who are living close to your organization might be complaining that your organization is involved in environmental pollution, or the organization might be accused that it is violating human rights, that there is an issue of human rights that is going on within your organization. And if you look at what has happened in the past, there are organizations that have found themselves in a crisis because they did not address complaints by the people living next to the organization, or they did not address issues that affected their workers, and ultimately that led to a crisis. So it might attract the national government or even the regulators. The issue might also involve international customers who might want to boycott your product. For example, there was the issue of Kakuzi Limited, where Kakuzi Limited was being accused of violating issues of human rights for the community within Makuyu and Muranga area. And what happened here, when this issue was raised by human rights organization, then what happened is customers in the United Kingdom actually started boycotting products by Kakuzi. So you can see, if this organization had, for instance, addressed the issue when it arose, then it means that this issue could not have reached to the point where it reached. Now, issues management means that you need to be aware of your operational environment, the people, the customers, the regulators. What is it that they are doing that might affect your organization? Issues management calls for the management understanding the trends in the environment. What is happening? What exactly is happening? What direction are we taking? What is the direction that the nation is taking? What is the direction that the issue of human rights is taking? What is the direction that the issue of climate change is taking? And be ahead of the game in ensuring that these issues may not culminate into a crisis for the organization. So what issues management does is that it helps the management to detect and respond to an issue before it turns into a crisis. Those could be issues that affect major organizations. In small organizations, you might find that there is something which is happening and which you are not sure about, but which you can be able to address to a point where it does not turn into a crisis. For instance, machines could be breaking down. You find that the machines are breaking down more regularly than they often do. Once you try to address this particular problem, employees can also sabotage because they are the ones operating these machines. They'll just operate a switch somewhere and the machine breaks down. And the breakdowns can become too much that they lead your organization into a crisis. So you need to be able to address, is the machine breakdown happening quite often? All right. So if you realize that the machines are breaking quite a number of times, then you might know that there is an issue here that needs to be addressed, and you need to bring those stakeholders together so that they can address that particular. The other thing that can also make you know that there is an issue in your organization is if you find that your employees have conflicts quite often. Now that means that there is an element of a lack of team cohesiveness. And if these, issues of conflict are being reported now and again, employee A has had a conflict with employee B has had a conflict with employee C, and it is being reported on Monday, it is reported on Wednesday, it is reported on Friday, it is reported on Tuesday, it keeps on being reported and reported and reported, then it means that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. The other thing that might make you know that you have an issue in your organization is when, for instance, there is a strike threat. Now, a strike threat means that the employees are definitely going to affect production in your organization. Maybe the employees are not very much committed to their work. You realize that production has gone down, and therefore you need to look at production going down as an issue. In an organization where production is consistently high, and then out of the blues, you start finding that production has started going down, then you might realize that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. Issues management means being ahead of the pack. It means that you are monitoring, you are scanning, you are seeing whatever is happening in that particular place of work. Your eyes and ears are open. You have your fingers at the pulse of the organization. This is what issues management means. The other thing is that you might find that there are issues of negligence. There are some silly mistakes that happen in a production environment should not be happening. Then you realize that here there is an issue that needs to be addressed. So if practiced properly, issues management can help an organization to detect and respond early to a matter that might turn out to a crisis. For instance, a few months ago, it was reported that one of the international tea producing companies in Kericho had issues of sex. People who had been tasked with the task of hiring and recruiting workers were actually soliciting for sex from women. It doesn't just come out from the blue. It does not happen. It doesn't come out from nowhere. Someone somewhere might have reported this particular issue, but the organization did not respond to it. Of course, it is one thing to have in your ethical standards being saying, here we do not condone issues of sexual exploitation. But it is another thing to hear that these things are happening and not addressing them. And the reason why now the organization now finds itself in a crisis, it's because it failed to address the issue at the issue stage. And that is why it ends up becoming a crisis. The crisis here does not mean that the company is not producing enough, that it has been closed, but it falls in terms of reputation. People need to deal with an organization that is of high integrity, whose reputation is high in the sky. That reputation is what gives customers faith and trust and confidence to be able to deal with you. So it is very important, therefore, for the organization to know what is happening within the public policy sector, what is happening with the regulators, and what is happening with the activists. So how then do we stay ahead when it comes to issues management? Now, one of the things that we are going to do is to keep engaging with our stakeholders in an open and transparent manner, so that if there is any issue that is developing, then they can always let us know and we can address it at the outset. So the other thing is to communicate effectively and efficiently and transparently. We have nothing to hide. Like Caesar's wife Our organizations must be beyond reproach. In the podcast where we talked about communication and the organization, we said that we must be ready to communicate deliberately with our stakeholders. And now we are also saying that if we have to address issues, then we must be ready to communicate transparently, and we must be ready to do it consistently. It is also important to seek and try to maintain stakeholder trust. How do we make our stakeholders trust us? And the only way in which stakeholders can trust us is, again, if we we communicate to them transparently, and openly, and efficiently, and in a timely manner. We don't just wait until an issue has ballooned into a crisis that then we start talking to them. No, we must be able to communicate to them transparently, efficiently, consistently, so that we maintain their trust. Even when the issue becomes a crisis, it will not catch them off guard. We will always be aware that there was an issue which was happening. Issues management is critical to any organization that wants to protect its reputation. It is very hard to build the reputation of the organization, but it is very easy to damage that reputation. And once you damage the reputation of your organization, then it becomes very hard for you again to rebuild that trust, because you have invested for years to build your reputation. Then you should be ready to guard that reputation jealously. And the only way in which you guard your reputation jealously is by ensuring that you address issues that might lead you to a crisis, that might affect your reputation, and affect your business. So thank you very much for watching this podcast. I would want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, because this is where we are going to keep on learning how we can manage our organization through the use of effective communication.